I've been asked a lot what I think about Jedi Fallen Order in a lot of my streams, and in this video, I want to give you guys my overall impressions of the game and kind of, complete it and compact it down into one 5, 6, 7, 8 minute video. Now, to start with, I just want to say that Jedi Fallen Order is one of those games that starts out slow, picks up steam, and just gets better and better throughout the course of the game. The second half of the game is markedly better than the first half, in my opinion, and is where the game really shines. Before I played Jedi Fallen Order, I had heard that it was a Souls-like, but Star Wars, and that is very, very misleading. The game is partially, a small amount Souls. I would say the boss fights and maybe some of the general gaming concepts of combat are Souls-like, but there are very few bosses in the game, and most of the gaming is platforming in between these sporadic bursts of combat, and so it's not really a Souls-like. Now, what's really interesting to me is this Uncharted feel the game has, where you're running, climbing, jumping, swinging off ropes, doing all these acrobatic things. I don't know anyone who really wanted this sort of Star Wars game. It's kind of an interesting concept to make a Star Wars Uncharted. Obviously, it doesn't have the production value of Uncharted. It's not as good as Uncharted. And it just kind of feels like it's filler gameplay in between the combat sections that doesn't really add much to the game. And I really would have liked to see just more combat, more action, and fighting your way through the levels with maybe, 50% less of the parkour and maybe make more combat in those stretches. But for what it does in terms of the Uncharted thing, it's not terrible. I just don't know anyone that really wanted that sort of gameplay. That said, the world design, the designs of the worlds is absolutely fantastic, particularly when you get into the tomb areas of the Jedis and things. Exploring these is really, really fun. They have this great ambiance. The game is subtly lacking some music in these areas that would really pull it together, but still, they're very, very breathtaking to look at. And I kind of wish they would have focused more if they were going to do this on those sort of things. The puzzles are kind of weak in there. I wish they would have gone more into that if they were going to go the whole Uncharted route. So they could have done the Uncharted thing and still made it even better than it was. There's definitely more potential for it, so if we see a sequel, I would rather they go further into the Uncharted with better puzzles, more dramatic atmosphere, keep with the tomb sort of theme, or they go the Souls route and kind of scrap most of the parkour, have more engaging combat with, more a leveling system, maybe some gear where players can, make a build sort of a thing. I think either one of those two styles would work. The combination is obviously, it's working. The game's selling well from what I understand. It's not a bad game at all. I really enjoyed it, and I think a lot of people really enjoyed it. But my own personal preference is that they would go more Uncharted or more Dark Souls, but not exactly where they stand now. But that's pretty nitpicky. The combat of the game is what really sold me on the game. It's what really brought me and pulled me into the game. The lightsaber duels with some of the enemies in the game are just fucking amazing. They're what you really want in a Star Wars game. They give you this sense of fulfillment and enjoyment, particularly when you're putting it on the hardest difficulty setting. They're challenging, they're memorable, and they frankly just feel really, really, really good. I just wish there were a few more of them in the game because to me, that was my favorite part of the game. The story of Star Wars is always something that everyone is always focused on because Star Wars games tend to have a really deep story or have the potential for a deep story, let's say. And unfortunately, this game has almost no story whatsoever. It's very off to the side of the main Star Wars plot. Supposedly it's canon, I don't know. But it doesn't really do anything. There's nothing memorable to it. It's not really interesting in any regard. It's pretty generic when it comes to story. And it really looks like, if it is canon, that the developers were really pigeonholed into a situation where they couldn't really say or do much, or it would not mesh with the lore of Star Wars because of the time frame of the game, which supposedly between episode 3 and episode 4. So they couldn't do anything that really affected anything, and it led to a really, really meh story, in my opinion. I think the combination of the weak story and just as you play through the game, the thing that's really telling to me about it is it feels like the game doesn't really have passion put into it. Other than the world environments, which are very good, the characters are not memorable, and it feels like everything was really done. I'm not sure what the word is. It was just really done empty. It just feels like when you're playing through that, it was made by the numbers. It wasn't made as a passion project by a bunch of people who really love Star Wars. It was made by a company that is just trying to put out a game that will be liked and bought by people. All these things in mind, I do feel like the game itself is worth playing if you're a Star Wars fan, despite its flaws, despite these things I think about it. I had fun with the game. I played it twice. There isn't really a need to play it a second time. I think the second time for me, I was just pushing myself doing a challenge run, which is something most people probably won't do. But that said, I do think it's worth the play. I'm not sure it's worth $60. It took me about 20 hours or so to get through the game on my first go, and I'm not sure that justifies a $60 purchase, particularly when it doesn't really pick up till about 5, 6, 7, 8 hours into the game. So you're really only getting like 12, 13 hours of really, really good Star Wars content. My recommendation is pick the game up on sale or either get the EA Origin Pass that I believe is like $15, and then you can play it on that and then, go on to play other games or something. That would be my recommendation. I don't think I would pay $60, but I do think the game should be supported as well because I do think it's a step in the right direction from previous Star Wars games. And I do feel like if they listen to fan feedback, the sequel will be even better, and it could be potentially a good Star Wars franchise, which is something we desperately, desperately need.